Something sickening is happening in Vietnam. This is an illegal procedure. This bear has been knocked unconscious with the prohibited drug ketamine, and its abdomen has been repeatedly punctured to find its gallbladder in order to drain the bile. The bile is used in traditional Chinese medicine. This bear and thousands of bears like it are kept permanently in cages like these for this one purpose only. This is one of the infamous bear farms of Asia. The use of bear bile in Chinese medicine goes back a very long time, but bears have only been kept in cages since the early 1990s. The idea of keeping bears in cages was introduced from China and other Asian countries. Tuan Bendixson is Vietnam director of the Animals Asia Foundation, an organization that rescues bears and provides sanctuaries for them in China and Vietnam.
Bear farm probably started because people believe that bear bile is good for them, and it's been kind of passed down to the generation that bear bile can cure certain ailments. People start to realize that they can actually start to make money from these bears. So that's how bear farming actually started.
These bears are caged under the most unconscionable conditions. Many of them spend anything up to 30 years of their life incarcerated in cages, which will eventually become their coffins. They are very often deliberately declawed, which means having the third phalanx of their paw tips hacked away so the claws will never grow again. Many of them are deliberately detoothed, and they have all four canine teeth cut back to gum level, exposing pulp and nerves. And even if the farmers haven't cut the teeth back, the bears will often shatter their own teeth as a result of repetitive bar biting during their years of confinement and frustration and stress on these farms.
In Vietnam, we got what we call small-scale holder, which means like the mom and dad of bear farmer. So each family will have one or two bears, so we have a lot of that. For example, we have over 4,000 bear on bear farm, but we have over 1,300 bear farmers. Just like a lot of the other industries, once someone see, for example, a neighbor start keeping bears and making money of it, he or she would buy their own bears and start the same things. The government actually introduced laws to ban it. So actually it was been outlawed since 1992. But because of law enforcement and lack of resource and so forth, bear farming kind of proliferated. We start seeing a lot more tourists especially from South Korea and China as well, to come in Vietnam to buy the bear bile, the fresh bear bile. And that's on the increase. And that's the reason why there's a lot of bear farm now. They move from the rural area into the tourist area. We're finding out now that a lot of these big farmers, they actually start buying bear from the smaller farm and making to a bigger farm.
Animals Asia are constantly working with bear farmers to try and persuade them to give up their bears. Here, Tuan is visiting a large farm with whom he's developed a good relationship. Even so, the bear farmers are not keen on our filming the bile extraction, which Tuan believes is in process.
If we just go in and just surprise them and film them, okay? They're finished, but we can go and have that.
We weren't able to catch them in the act, but Tuan quickly spots the bear that has just had an extraction.
This bear obviously just been knocked out with the drugs, probably ketamine, so that they can do a bile extraction. And that's why it's not responding at all. Normally, if you put your hand into a cage like this, it'll bite you. It will turn around because you're picking on it. And here I can put it in and trying to touch it, and it's not even moving. It's not responding at all. See, because it can't respond. It's paralyzed basically. The bears. And this is illegal. This is against the law, and they know that. And of course, it's still happening at the moment. So this is one of the bear farms in Phu Thot district, and this bear farm has about 40 bears. And as you can see, all these bears, they've been here for at least probably about 5 to 10 years now. And this is the condition that they are kept under. And of course, you look at the base of the cage, it's not very good for the feet because it's all bar and it's not flat ground, right? And also you can see that there's no water in the cage, and all the water bowls are outside on the floor, and they should have water all the time. I mean, bears get thirsty just like us, so they probably get fed once a day only. And so this is the sad fact of it, is that they're not be able to, behave the way they would do in the wild. In the wild they'll be able to forage for foods, climb trees and things like that, but here they just move back and forward. With this bear, you can see all the white mark on his head, and that's just from hitting his head against the bar, and it's so bored. It can't go anywhere, so it just keeps rubbing and rubbing. Just a way to escape the boredom, something to do basically. And that's why you see all this mark on the bear head. The noise the bear making now is the comfort itself. We see that in cubs. When the cubs are separate from their mother very early on, it sucks on its own pole as a way to comfort itself. And obviously these bears, probably been here for a long time now, and it probably feels sorry for itself, and they can't do anything else except trying to, soothe itself, trying to survive basically.
The situation regarding bear farming in Vietnam is complicated. In 1999, the Vietnamese government carried out a survey of bear farming. They found about 400 bears. A proposal was put to the government that they could completely eradicate bear farming because 400 bears were a manageable number.
The government, in their wisdom, they ignored the proposal and they just let it go. And within 5 years, that 400 became 4,000 bears.
Now it's legal to have bears if they were in your possession before February 2005. However, they must be microchipped and have registration papers. But the law states clearly that they are not allowed to be exploited in any way and may only be used for scientific studies. So people are allowed to keep bears, but they are not allowed to extract bile, even for personal use. However, because of lack of resources, the government finds it hard to enforce the laws, even the laws actually advertising the sale of bear bile. On the wall near this bear farm just outside Hanoi is a sign which blatantly advertises bear bile for sale. And on the road back into Hanoi, we see several signs boldly advertising bear bile, some with even a phone number. Then Tuan suddenly spots a bile extraction taking place.
Doing extraction in the cage there. Yeah, so if we could, we can catch them. Of course, this is against the law, so they're not allowed to do this.
These people in broad daylight flout the law by conducting an extraction in a storefront right on the main road. The woman realizes that we are filming and tries to stop us.
Why?
In desperation, she shuts the gate. But it's too late. To try and protect the bear, Tuan will report the woman to the authorities.
All these people start buying, 1 or 2 bears and keeping them. And the way they do is that when they have a customer coming in to buy the bear bile, because a lot of the customers don't believe in what they're getting is a real genuine bear bile. So which means that this bear farm will often have to extract the bear bile in front of the customer and give them that bear bile so that the customer will believe that what they're getting is the real stuff.
Even though it's illegal, bear bile can also be easily bought in shops in the city. Back in Hanoi, we go in search of a shop to buy bear bile. It isn't difficult. Because of his association with Animals Asia, Tuan is known to many of the shopkeepers, so his assistant shows us to several places. At the first shop, they show us several products made from bear bile. This is tea.
It is kind of tea.
The woman claims that none of their bear bile merchandise is from Vietnam, that it all comes from China. When we ask for pure bear bile, the woman sees that we are filming and starts to get suspicious. She disappears and doesn't return. At the next shop we go to, we have no difficulties. They instantly produce a vial containing 10 milliliters of pure bear bile.
How much?
The cost is 220,000 dong, about $10. When we ask the shop assistant if she knows how the bile is extracted, she misunderstands and tells us not to worry, that the quality is good. When we ask the same question again, the answer is they don't know and basically don't care.
The situation in Vietnam now is the law enforcement. Vietnam has very good laws in trying to protect their wildlife, especially the bears, but there's lack of law enforcement. Virtually almost none law enforcement. And we, Animal Asia, for the last 3 years now, we've been trying to get the government to enforce their own laws, and that's not easy.
In fact, there is a doctor with a clinic and pharmacy boldly right on the main road who not only supplies bear bile to his patients, but takes it himself. The doctor says that bear bile has many uses. He says when you go hunting and only use one bullet, you only get one result. But using bear bile is like hunting with multiple bullets. Then you get many results and hit all the targets. He actually admits to having used bear bile himself for over 10 years, which is why his skin is not like an old person's, he says. The doctor's own brother actually runs a bear farm. When we ask him about the severe cruelty involved, he tells us that there are two sides to it. If you keep the bears in cages, he says, they're not free anymore. But he claims that the benefit is that they're getting food every day, while they might not find food every day in the wild. This is an argument that we hear repeated time and again in Vietnam. When we ask the doctor again about the suffering of the bears and how it affects them and whether he cares, he simply does not get it. Instead, he first tells us that by keeping the bears in cages, the quality of the bear bile will be better. And then, extraordinarily, he goes on to say that it's important to starve a bear for up to 48 hours before extracting their bile. Otherwise, there's no bile left in the gallbladder to be extracted, because the bile would otherwise be used to digest the bear's own food. And then he contradicts what he said earlier by saying that a bear in the wild is always eating, so its body is always full of food. He then tries to sell us 10 cc's of bear bile. But most Vietnamese traditional doctors disagree. Dr. Nguyen Son Hoang is chairman of the Traditional Medicine Association of Vietnam and carries the title of People's Doctor, the highest-ranking position in the country's medical profession. He tells us that he's been practicing traditional Chinese medicine for 50 years now, and he doesn't use bear bile at all. He says that some people insist on taking bear bile, even though they don't know what effect it has on their body. But these days, people have money, and they want to show off that they can afford the best for their health. In fact, he says, bear bile has a very bad effect on the liver, kidneys, and a lot of your organs. Worse than that, he has treated 10 patients for bear bile poisoning since 1985, and has had 3 patients who took bear bile and died. He is currently treating 1 patient who is losing his fingernails and also has problems with his mouth because he took bear bile. He says bear bile is generally not being prescribed by doctors. His association has 7,000 members, and only a few prescribe bear bile. Mostly it's the people who keep bears who are promoting bear bile.
what has been happening, of course, is that bear farmers are taking cubs from the wild and putting them into cages and then siphoning off their bile when they become about 3 years old by surgically degrading their bodies. And so what we're seeing now as well is that cubs from all across the Asia continent are sort of coming into these farms in China and in Vietnam from places like Laos, Cambodia, etc. So the situation absolutely is worse as a result of bear farming.
If they capture the cub, they normally have to kill the mother and then remove the cubs. And the cub is much easier to transport than a big bear. So they can hide it easily. Whereas a big bear, they need to, hire a truck and get cages and knock the bears out and to move them. Whereas the cubs, they can, put in the bags and just carry it. We work closely with the government on the rescue side, so we were there to rescue the bear from the bear farm and take it back to our sanctuary in Tam Tam National Park.
These 2 cubs have been confiscated by the government, and together with 2 adult bears are going to be taken to the Animals Asia Sanctuary. The bears are carefully and securely loaded into a truck to be transported to the Bear Rescue Center. Over 70 bears live in this sanctuary in the beautiful Tam Do National Park, an hour's drive from Hanoi. Here, the bears are nurtured and enjoy life. They also receive a high degree of professional care. The cubs are unloaded and taken through into the quarantine area.
Oh, they're both boys,
Yeah,
so
I
4
always
boys.
thought so, yeah. It's got a really strong smell as well, the other one. It's got that real uncastrated male taste.
Yeah.
So we've just unloaded the bears from the truck from their journey, and they've been brought to this, which we call our temporary area, which is where we can quarantine these bears for 45 days before we can think about bringing them close to any of our resident bears. So they've just been transferred from their transport cages into a temporary cage, which means we can watch them closely, provide them with individual portions of food and monitor them over the next month and a bit. This is more room than they've had the last couple of months since they were confiscated. They were kept in quite a small cage because of the lack of room at Sok Sern, so they're enjoying their newfound ability to stretch their legs, I think.
Animals Asia is trying to stamp out bear farming completely. They have managed to rescue over 350 bears. As well as the sanctuary in Vietnam, 166 bears also survive today in a sanctuary in Chengdu in southwest China. After years trapped in cages, it's a delight for these bears to be able to roam around at will. But the sanctuary does more than simply give the bears their freedom. It encourages them to be active and healthy. There's also an enrichment program where the bears seek out their own food.
Every bear has their own portion of food. So the vet team will decide how much food that the bear can have for each morning and dinner. Each bear has their own bucket, and the bear can enjoy it inside the den. Besides the 2 main meals, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, we have enrichment session. That to give the bear more food and more toys for them to play, keep them busy and have something to play with on the day. We have a lot of things like the jammy thing that smells very good. We have honey and we have chocolate. Yeah, chocolate.
For the nighttime and during some natural winter hibernation periods, the bears are called into their specially designed dens. Although there are bars, the dens should in no way be confused with the cages they had been living in. They are conceived to be as much like their natural habitat as possible. There are proper floors and platforms for the bears to climb on, and baskets to sleep in. Up to 4 bears share a den. The dens are cleaned and enriched daily.
They can come in the dens to clean and put the enrichment items like small jammy foods and some toys inside the dens, and then open the doors back again, and the bears can go to the already enriched den and enjoy the enrichment items.
At the moment we have 21 bears in this group, but we're not. We started off with a group of 6 and then 8 young bears, and we started adding more and more bears to that. We've had to work with a couple of different age groups, and sometimes that has been slightly challenging, but in general it's going really well. I would say the males most often just want to play. The females are a little bit more cranky, so you need to try and find a bit of a balance where you have females and males together. They try and work it out a little bit, who gets along with who. We normally put them next to each other for a little while before we actually introduce them. If we see a lot of aggressive behaviour, we'd be very careful introducing those bears. But obviously if there's a lot of positive, playful behaviour, it's a lot easier to then open slides and get them introduced.
In the mornings, while the bears are still in their dens, the sanctuary staff clean, refresh, and enrich the enclosures. When they're finished, a bell rings and the bears come out to play for the day. Each of the sanctuaries in China and Vietnam has a full team of vets and veterinary nurses to treat the bears and care for them.
Our vet team in Chengdu and Vietnam, their learning curve is absolutely vertical. They've never seen pathology like this when they come, and they have to cope so professionally, not just with the surgeries and the problems of the bears, but of course with their own emotions as well. And they do it, to the level that astounds me each and every day. They are superb, every single staff member.
Every bear living in the sanctuary has a regular health check, and each new bear has a full and rigorous examination.
Quite often these bears will have damage to their internal organs, to their liver. Quite often the needle passes through the liver as they're trying to locate the gallbladder. Sometimes it passes through the spleen. So quite often there's chronic damage done to the liver, the spleen, and of course the gallbladder, because they don't prepare this in a surgical manner, so there's an unsterile needle going into the sterile abdomen and gallbladder. Because we know she's had bile extractions, and because we've seen this scarring on her abdomen, we probably will remove her gallbladder at some stage, because we're worried that it will have ongoing inflammation as a result of her having had bile extracted over a number of years.
But there's some excellent news. Tuan has received a call from the owner of the bear farm we had visited earlier. He wants Animals Asia to take all 40 of his bears. So Tuan sits down with the owner to talk things through. The farmer wants Animals Asia to pay for the bears, but that's illegal. So Tuan is trying to persuade him to give them up on humanitarian grounds. This is just the sort of development that Animals Asia works so hard towards. The closure of this farm will free 40 bears, and hopefully it will also encourage smaller bear owners nearby to release their bears. With continued hard work, all the farms will be closed. This obscene practice will be ended, and the bears will be allowed to live out their days peacefully and happily.